When application completion rates drop, something is off. Students aren't getting the support they need, and that's affecting your numbers. Enter Element 451's AI assistants. They step in where students struggle, offering real-time answers and advice, guiding them through every step. Learn how AI assistants can boost your enrollment outcomes. Visit element451.com/AI team to learn more.
You may search for top basketball programs, or you may search for, maybe you find out that UK has a great agriculture program. So top agriculture programs in the SEC. You never mention Kentucky, so it's non-branded. It is kind of branded to SEC, but get away from that. I just really want to talk about Kentucky looking good at basketball, if we can do that for just a second. So
we have definitely found our way into Kentucky basketball.
Non-branded traffic is not including the name of a school. So you may say best agriculture program, you may say whatever. So that's where you want most of your traffic to come from. And branded traffic, when they mention your name, when they search for University of College or College University, whatever your school's name is, that's going to be a much lower percentage of your traffic. But that's when these metrics start to work together, really, because if they mention your school, you want to be in the top 5 results.
Welcome to the EduData Podcast, a podcast that serves as your weekly guide to the data driving higher education. We are your hosts. I'm Jamie Boggs.
And I'm Timothy Davis. Join us every Friday for weekly breakdowns of the most important data, trends, and topics in higher education.
The EduData Podcast is a part of the Enrollify network, a robust collection of podcasts designed to help higher education professionals like you grow. Explore our other shows at enrollify.org or check out some of my personal favorites linked in the show notes below.
Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered, all-in-one student engagement platform, helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.
Welcome to the newest edition of the EduData Podcast. I'm Jamie Boggs here with Timothy Davis. What's up, buddy?
Hey.
It's been
doing
a while.
Good. How are you? It has been. Yeah, we haven't recorded for a little bit. I had some PTO. I'm really bad at just taking PTO days throughout the year, and I kind of save them, in case I need sick days or, got a 4-year-old. So we'll, see about keeping them home or whatever. But then I just kind of get to October, November, and it's oh man, I have 20 days.
Yeah.
gotta use these. So,
as somebody that covers for you when you're gone, I've noticed those being my most stressful months.
Oh no.
No, totally joking. And we've had some wonderful guests too. So we haven't been doing as many just traditional Jamie and Timothy episodes, but we have a good one today. I stumbled upon a report from Carnegie, who does all the research. And I don't know, it sounds like a prestigious name. Just, it feels like
they really nailed the branding with that. Yeah. They had previously merged. I'm not familiar with their entire history, but Mallory Wilsey from The Pulse is tied up in that history, and so maybe she'll interject kind of a little voiceover in the middle of this episode to give us the abridged history.
Actually,
yeah, exactly.
Carnegie.
Yeah,
yes, please.
A smash cut. Timothy and Jamie were totally wrong.
We were completely off, but they do research and they provide really good insights into the education world. And they just put out this report that is the 2024 higher ed SEO benchmarks for the year. So a few words there to kind of break down. We're going to spend most of our time talking about benchmarks, but just so we're on the same page about SEO, this is search engine optimization. Very data based. You're looking at different engines that show you essentially the return, where you rank among other websites based on certain words. And the optimization piece is your capability to build your website in such a way that there are words that pop and that register a little bit more than others. And it's not highlighting things in white. It knows if you're cheating, right? So there are ways to blog and organize your website and index it that makes it more searchable. So looking at where your website ranks among others, where it appears above the fold is a big term in SEO. You want to be on the first page of the search. All that is a part of this. And the benchmarks, of course, you just want to talk in general about what benchmarks are, Timothy.
Benchmarking, right, is kind of an analysis concept where we take different types of data or different instances of the same data and merge it together to try to understand how they're all performing relative to each other. A common benchmark that you might be familiar with is like market share. We sometimes talk about that in higher ed. That's a little bit more common in other industries, but like a market share is a benchmarking ratio that says like of all the people that are, pursuing higher education, we've recruited and have enrolled, X amount. So our market share of the entire industry or of this subset of the industry that's maybe within like 200 miles of our institution, right, is our market share of all the students that are pursuing higher education. And so you can kind of use that to compare yourselves to other competitors. So like, again, back to that like 200-mile radius example. So like, let's say there's 4 or 5 colleges within that radius. If the market is growing, everyone might see an increase in market share. But if the market is shrinking, then we might be taking market share away from each other. And again, referencing the poll, Seth and Mallory talk about that across a few episodes that I've heard them mention it. So I'll hop over there and scroll through some of their podcasts for a little bit more information about that. But that's the general concept of benchmarking, is that we have our data, and in terms of SEO, we have our data about our website. But what does our website look like compared to other higher ed websites? And that's actually the like motivating question of this survey. So if you're following along with us in this report, page 3 of the actual PDF, table of contents, item 1 is the executive summary. And that first paragraph there is, how do you know if your website is truly performing well? What does good organic traffic look like for a university or college? So you may have, the context of your website and your own personal benchmarks against yourself, but how are we stacking up against the rest of the industry? And where might there be opportunities to capitalize on where the rest of the industry is not doing as great, and potentially find ourselves a new market or more students?
I find it interesting in a world of education. And we talk about this a lot with testing, right? They're testing benchmarks. You have to make this on the SAT to be considered here, or this on the ACT math to be considered, or whatever. But in education, where we talk a lot about nuance, a benchmark in and of itself is kind of a threshold of above it, we're good, below it, we're not good. Like there's no room for breaking there. So, and that's the question, right? How is our website performing well? Is it a good website based on search engine optimization? Some metrics to look at here: CTR, click-through rate. So if your website pops up on a search, what's the percentage of times that it's clicked on? Ranking position. So this is literally, if you go and Google a phrase, if you Google math graduate program, and where does your website for your institution come up in order of that search? So they often rank those in percentiles, or you can say we're ranked in the top 10s, usually the first page. That's where you really want to be. You can look at this in a lot of different ways. You want to be improving, of course, but so we're looking at ranking position, click-through rate, visibility, and total traffic are 4 of the main metrics that we look at with SEO. And I think you'd highlighted a few things about their procedures of gathering this you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, so we could kind of talk about the methodology and kind of the technology behind this particular report. And then I can kind of kick it back to you to talk about what they gleaned from this analysis and how they kind of propose that readers can take advantage of this data. But basically, all of this is living on the Google platform, right? So the SEO that we're considering here, the search engine in question, is Google search. So in case you weren't familiar, right, when students go to Google search and they, looking for a program or a degree or a college of, certain types, or trying to figure out what they want to do in their 20s or as they leave high school, whatever that looks like, they're going to Google and potentially asking questions about this to try to find information. So your institution's website can rank in the search results. Basically, that means that it will be, the first result they see, the second result, the third result, the fourth result, and those are indexed, right? So if you are consistently the first result for this query of tell me about institution X, or, institution X campus location and you're the first 4 results, you're ranking really high for that particular keyword, that particular search query. And sometimes we're going to have queries that are branded as they're referred to, meaning that they like reference your institution by name, or that are non-branded. So maybe they're asking about programs or degrees or fields of study, or campus attributes or applications or whatever. You may be ranking for any of those college adjacent queries, but not specifically asking for your institution. So branded versus non-branded is another consideration here. But basically all that lives within Google search, right? And Google can deliver that search information to you if you verify your domain. So if your institution.edu domain, if you verify that with Google through the Google Search Console, then Google can verify that you are the owner of that domain, and they'll show you data about your search results through a platform called the Google Search Console. You can go search that and set up your own account. It's got to be connected to a Google account. So you might have to create one for your institution or for your office, or somebody at your institution might have already claimed it. But again, this is all like really interesting stuff that you can look at, and you can see the queries, the search queries that people are searching to find your website. And that can help you, in a lot of ways, as we'll see here. But, one of them is like creating new content. Cool. So we've got Google Search Console, and we've also got Google Analytics. So Google Analytics is an analytics tracking platform that deploys some code onto your website that will monitor page views. So when people load new pages, it tracks that. Also tracks what they click, maybe tracks like videos that they may watch or how deep into the page they scroll. Just collect some metrics like that by default. You can also customize like the conversions you track. So if you have a form, you want to call that like an inquiry, right? You can monitor that and track that specifically, like explicitly declare an inquiry action through Google Analytics 4. But basically what Carnegie did here is they worked with some of their partners to collect Google Search Console data and Google Analytics data into basically a big database. Like they pulled reports from that. It looks like the time periods that they used for Google Search Console were August 31st, 2022 to August 31st, 2023. And for GA4, Google Analytics, that would have been July 1st, 23 to June 30th, 24. So basically a year time frame, like looking at year-based traffic with a little bit of overlap in those two time periods. But basically they pulled that all together into a centralized database, and they kind of merged those disparate data sources together into a big table. And from that, they were able to quantify the behavior of organic traffic and click-through rates from different search queries to be able to kind of give across these 50 clients representing their portfolio what the sort of benchmark averages are. So from that, what do you want? What did they find, Jamie, and how can we use that?
Yeah, just one more point moving forward. The purpose of a benchmark is to measure yourself. So you need to be measuring yourself against like institutions. So four-year public, community college, that kind of thing. You don't want to be measuring yourself against a different type of institution, because that is it's a different animal and it's not as useful to you. Now, this is overall, this report, just to be clear. So this is something certainly that you can take a look at, but if you're wanting to measure yourself within a lot of SEO platforms, you can actually choose, here are 10 websites that I want to compare myself against, and it does the benchmarking for you. So that's really helpful to utilize. But across higher ed, this is all organic traffic. So the difference between organic and paid traffic: organic is somebody's going out and searching it, they're finding it, it's linked from another website, they're getting there without a paid ad of some kind. So 87% of the visibility coming from non-branded traffic, meaning when they're searching it, they're not, maybe you watched the University of Kentucky beat the Duke University in basketball a few weeks ago, and you thought, you know what, I want to go to that looks amazing, which I was really, really pleased with. But you don't want to just search for University of Kentucky. You may search for top basketball programs, or you may search for, maybe you find out that UK has a great agriculture program. So top agriculture programs in the SEC. You never mention Kentucky, so it's non-branded. It is kind of branded to SEC, but get away from that. I just really want to talk about Kentucky looking good at basketball, if we can do that for just a second. So
we have definitely found our way into Kentucky basketball.
Non-branded traffic is not including the name of a school. So you may say best agriculture program, you may say whatever. So that's where you want most of your traffic to come from. And branded traffic, when they mention your name, when they search for University of College or College University, whatever your school's name is, that's going to be a much lower percentage of your traffic. But that's when these metrics start to work together, really, because if they mention your school, you want to be in the top 5 results. You don't want to search for a school in a state and the other state school come up. Like, you want to be one of the top 5 there. Whereas non-branded traffic, as long as you're in the top 3 or 4 pages, that's kind of the benchmark. Of course, you want to be higher. So number 33 is the non-branded median rank. And then click-through rate, kind of the same. If it's branded, you expect them to click on it 13% of the time. If they're doing that, you're doing well. If it's non-branded, it's down to 0.9% of the time. So not as high expectations for that non-branded, but that's often what you work the hardest to gain ground in when you are optimizing your SEO. All that to say, we spend a lot of our time talking about surprising statistics. Benchmarks are not supposed to be surprising. They're supposed to be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That's where I need to be. So not a lot of surprising stuff here. But what I do love about this report is it actually breaks down at the end. Hey, is your click-through rate on branded search low? If so, these are things you should look at to improve it. Is your click-through rate below the industry standard overall? These are things you can do to improve that. So it has actual solutions for problems that you find when measuring yourself against benchmarks. Love that. This is what all research, the purpose of it, right? Secondly, it also incorporates a new kind of search feature that's really just starting to show up. I mean, traditionally you look at just your search results. So links that pop up, you have images, you have videos, you have the carousel, which is kind of like a scroll of pages or whatever. But now, if you've searched anything in the last 12 months, you're starting to get some AI responses. So it gives just a little preview of how those AI overlays or overviews that are popping up are impacting search, and some suggestions for how you can grow your AI presence in the SEO world as well, which is kind of a new venture for all of us. We're incorporating AI, but how do we help AI find our website and bump it up in the rankings?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is just a really usable report overall. They're going to outline a couple of use cases here where you can like take these benchmarks and compare them to your data in Google Search Console or in Google Analytics, basically looking at like your different pages. And if your pages have click-through rates that are above or below that median, you could prioritize the work that you do. And they suggest, different things like adding additional metadata to the page, adding headers. And these are all things that the search algorithm that Google uses will consider when trying to make the best recommendation to Google search users. A lot of opportunity in there to improve. And again, also something that you can use to report on. When you have these benchmarks, you can say, our website performance is exceeding this benchmark that's set by Carnegie across, 50 of their portfolio clients. And get a sense of how successful your own institution's website management is looking.
I used to work at a marketing agency, and that was pretty much our whole report of, here are the benchmarks. This is where our ads for your institution, it was a higher ed marketing company. These are where our ads are performing based on the benchmarks. And like I said earlier, it's almost a pass fail. If you're not meeting the benchmark, you have to talk about why. If you are, then you need to look into why that's doing so well. So that's the case. Of course, that's mostly paid search or paid ads. Whereas here we're looking at all organic search. But just benchmarks in general, I think it's an important conversation to have of how are we as an institution, as an office, as whatever area you work in, how are we determining our benchmarks? Are we Googling other schools and assuming that data is going to be correct that are kind of like us and establishing those ourselves? There are places like Carnegie. There are a lot of agencies or professional organizations out there that are kind of setting these standards. So where are you getting them? And then how are you using them? Are you using them to just fuss at people for not meeting them? Or are you using them to strategize? I think there's a lot you can get from this if you approach it the right way, not as just you're not doing well enough, like we look at with the standardized test scores and those benchmarks. I think we use those inappropriately, but that's a whole other, I don't think it's political, but maybe controversial with standardized tests and opinions of that. So yeah, I think we need to look at it constructively.
Yeah, let me draw a comparison in two ways that we might use benchmarks. I kind of mentioned a previous use case where we were looking at like market share. I think benchmarks when it comes to like high level off-platform or non-owned platform data like Google Search Console, like no institution owns search results, right? That's all Google. And so like your performance there is somewhat in your control, but Google is always kind of modifying that algorithm. We've seen them roll out these new AI search results, right? So benchmarks can be really helpful here because it's going to give you a sense of the overall landscape, right? It's not something that you fully control. And so if you see benchmarks start to dip while your own, personal results have started to dip as well, you can say, okay, have we been dipping at the same rate as the benchmark, or have we been beating the benchmark, even if we're going through sort of a decline period? So benchmarks can be really helpful there in understanding the entire landscape, because that landscape is going to be affecting everybody, not just your institution. Contrasting that to like an enrollment or a persistence rate benchmark, right? You might be able to look at like iPEDS data and look at graduation rates over time against your peer institutions or across the entire industry. And you might say, okay, well, our, persistence rate or our graduation rate for a 6-year cohort is, X and the industry benchmark is Y. Okay, well, the industry benchmark is, considering a lot of different factors, and there's a lot of different factors that are influencing that process, but your persistence rate is much more controlled environment. Sure, you're going to have the unpredictability of students and their lives and their homes, but your ability to offer them services, your ability to meet them with the right communications at the right time, those are factors that are much more under your control. And so it might not be as useful to compare graduation and persistence rates and, kind of say, well, we're okay, because we're, meeting this benchmark or we're in line with this benchmark, where, in a more controlled environment, your personal performance may be able to improve due to factors that are not related to the rest of the industry. Does that kind of make sense?
Absolutely. No, that's perfect. I think in addition to that, if you are doing some benchmarking yourself, I think it's important to stay on top of it. Your benchmarking institutions, because every school has a list, is not the same today as it was in 1985. So if you haven't changed it or looked deeply at who your benchmark school should be, take a look at that. That's important to keep up with. Things are changing so fast, and you don't want to be comparing yourselves to the wrong places.
Yeah, and that's another thing that you can even use Google Search Console to sort of monitor, is like where you might be losing out on certain keywords, and you can try searching those queries yourself and seeing what results come up. It may be some of your competitors, or maybe other schools or institutions or services. We've seen a lot of just kind of non-institution affiliated credentials and programs and courses come up that are not in the higher ed sector traditionally, that you may now need to be considering as your competitors. So yeah, it can be a helpful tool for competitor analysis.
As always, we'll provide access to the report in our show notes. Would love some feedback on this. Maybe you have a different idea of how to approach benchmarks. Maybe you have a different source of benchmarks you found more meaningful for your work. Please, all of our episodes are shared over on LinkedIn on the Enrollify page. That's probably the best place for these conversations to happen. Go follow Enrollify, comment, and let us know what you think about benchmarks.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. We'll see you in the next episode. Have a great weekend.
The EduData podcast is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you'll like the other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing by the month. We've got a plethora of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional.
Our shows help higher ed marketers and admissions professionals find their next big idea and feature a selection of the industry's best as your hosts. Learn from Jamie Hunt, Artis Cadu, Dustin Ramsdale, Jeremy Tiers, and so many of your other favorite leaders in higher ed. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the leading AI-powered all-in-one student engagement platform helping institutions create meaningful, personalized, and engaging interactions with students. Learn more at element451.com.